Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Last week, a survey found that the less an American knew about Ukraine's location on a map, the more they wanted the U.S. to intervene militarily. I don't need a survey to tell you that the less an American knows about capitalism, the more they want intervention in the markets. The less they know about money, the more they want the central bank. The less they know about standing on their own 2 feet, the more they want to help to buy scams and plunge protection teams. Ignorance would indeed be bliss for all of us if the ignorant would just Stacy.
Well, Max, yes, that article from the Washington Post came with a chart that was shown around the world, and this is where the Americans estimated Ukraine was, and only 16% of them got it right. The worst at placing Ukraine on the map were the over 65s, i.e. the sort that watches Fox News, where their average audience is 68.
Well, it's a remarkable use of data to understand that the most belligerent toward other countries are the most ignorant. But I mean, it makes sense that if you would have any kind of understanding at all or have any empathy for your fellow human being, including knowing where they live and where they exist on the map, you would be less likely to blow them to kingdom come. But in America, which is not known for its educational prowess, and so many people have no idea even where Europe, the entire area of Europe, would be on a map, much less Ukraine. They believe, yeah, let's go blow them up because it satisfies my inner need to exercise my right to be stupid.
Max, forget Europe. They did not know where the United States is on the map. They pointed, a lot of them picked out Alaska. Many of them across the middle of the United States, the flyover states. They chose that as the Ukraine. Let's go bomb that. They would have been happy to bomb it. So those were the furthest away, and they were the ones most willing to bomb it. And they would have been perfectly happy if it was being bombed in the middle of the United States, those flyover states. So the Washington Post asked, does it really matter whether Americans can put Ukraine on a map? Previous research would suggest yes. Information or the absence thereof can influence Americans' attitudes about the kind of policies they want their government to carry out and the ability of elites to shape that agenda. So when you have, I mean, if you look back to the founding of America, you saw very clearly the likes of Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin said it was very important that the population remain educated and smart. Otherwise, stupid people are easy to turn into tyrannical thugs.
Well, I mean, this is why America has gone reactionarily back to a religious fundamentalism to overcome their educational shortcomings in trying to understand why their economy is collapsing and why things that are happening to them that are happening to them. Instead of looking at it from the point of view of wanting more information and making intelligent decisions, they're reverting back to religious freaks.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the intentional process. But the other thing that's important is that this new Supreme Court ruling came out, and rich people rule. This is also from the Washington Post, and they talked about the Gilded Age Supreme Court ruling, and they asked how important is money in the United States in determining outcomes of legislative process. And they said Martin Gillens and Benjamin Page analyzed 1,779 policy outcomes over a period of more than 20 years. They conclude that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence. In fact, business groups lobbying government compared to citizens lobbying government, the business groups had 15 times more impact, according to their data and their analysis of the data, on outcomes and law.
Right, and well, this is being fueled by this bubble in asset prices, which we see being engaged by the central banks and their minions on Wall Street and in the city of London. So people are willfully ignorant. They're either actually plain dumb ignorant, or they're willfully ignorant, trying to pray to the god of Mammon that their house prices are going to go up in value and they can join their oppressors in the elite class. But of course, as we know, these bubbles pop all the time, and we're overdue for a big bubble pop at the moment, so then everyone is going to be left holding the bag.
But again, that goes back to this ignorance, and the more ignorant you are, apparently it doesn't make you blissful, or maybe it does make them blissful, but it makes the entire economy less blissful, because look at, since we went off the gold standard, not only have we had way more financialization and these bubbles that people seem to love. People do, you have to say, they go wild, they seem to really enjoy themselves, but all the statistics in the United States show the average person has got poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer through that whole time. Though they are more and more euphoric during that time. They feel like they're having a religious experience and getting richer without, they never seem to notice that they don't actually have a real job, but their house price is making them miraculously wealthy.
Well, the biggest religion in America right now is methamphetamine. That's the God most people pray to. It gives them a sense of euphoria and well-being, and it lasts, at least 90 seconds or so. People like to knock their teeth out and sell them for, pretend it's methamphetamine to get some real I don't know the whole thing. I saw it on the news. But you got these toothless crackers, essentially, who are trying to achieve a state of euphoria out there in the middle of America by smoking drugs all day. And that gives them the equivalent of feeling like Donald Trump. You see, that's how they get to their Trump state of mind. And methamphetamine is the #1 religion in America.
That and a little wig, but the survey also found that 19% of people who called up a congressman and pretended to be a donor, 19% of them got a meeting with a congressman. Only 5% of constituents were able to get a meeting. So they care more about the donor than the constituent. But this ignorance being, the fact that the ignorant are so much more certain than those who are a little bit more nuanced and understand all the participants and the players and what's going on in geopolitics or what's happening in markets. They're much more nuanced, aren't they, than the ignorant who will be like, just bomb them! Bomb them! I don't care. Who is it? Let's bomb Kansas if they have anything to do with Ukraine.
Well, it's that's why the war is, send over these young men who haven't had a chance to actually think through what's going on there. They're very easily swayed into fighting for perceived enemies. But here you have young people in the U.S. and around the world who are fighting a war against intelligence. And they're fighting a war against science. And they're fighting a war against the body of knowledge that we know to be true, like the science which is pointing toward the ecological holocaust that's being provoked by the same corporate elites. But by taking drugs all day, you can conveniently ignore the fact that you're being victimized by an eco-holocaust from the likes of Exxon and Monsanto and Halliburton and the Koch brothers. And, why bother getting arrested when you yourself have checked into a prison of your own stupidity?
So you also mentioned at the top of the show that those who know less about money, if they're ignorant about money, they're more pro-central bank. Well, this is in the headline survey. People who know least about Bitcoin want to ban it most. So they did a survey. 56% of Americans were completely unaware of Bitcoin, had never even heard of it. And after being told that Bitcoin is a new online digital currency that is not connected to any particular country's currency system and is not controlled by any government, 54% of Americans who had previously known nothing at all about Bitcoin said that their government shouldn't allow it to be used to purchase goods and services.
Well, those people, another name for those people are Chinese. In other words, China, of course, is cracking down on Bitcoin now because they finally figured out that it's a way for the people to overcome their communist leaders. So in the U.S., of course, the banks that are kowtowing to Chinese communist bankers don't want the U.S. population to enjoy the benefits of a distributed coin outside of the ravages of a central command and control kleptocracy either. So, but for those who give it some thought, they would say, wow, you mean I can have financial sovereignty? I can have financial independence? Yeah, of course, that would be the goal. That was the goal of the Ben Franklin, who said it was the independence from the Bank of England was the prime motivating factor that got the founding fathers to declare their independence from the crown and start the thing called the American Revolution. So Bitcoin gives you that same opportunity. Declare your independence from Jamie Dimon. That's what Bitcoin allows you to do.
Well, I think there are moves in the United States to allow it to happen. Obviously, the IRS has ruled on it, so it's allow it to happen. China, on the other hand, thinks that it's a losing battle for them because they're the new rising power and they don't want to share it with anybody else, including the people of the world. So UK debt is actually £100 billion higher than we thought, official stats body to say. So first, the good news about this, the Office for National Statistics will bring in the new calculation this autumn as part of a sweeping changes that include estimating illegal activities like prostitution and drug dealing as worth £10 billion to the country's national wealth.
Right. The UK is hiding debt. And we've been saying all along that the GDP numbers are rising, but not as fast as the debt, and that's the stated debt. Now, if they add in more debt that they haven't been adding, you see quite clearly that the UK cabinet of George Osborne and the other folks there are buying growth by taking the UK credit card and overspending to the tune of they're going to be at 1.5 trillion pounds in debt very soon. Heading to 2 trillion pounds in debt. And that's based entirely on an economy that has a current account deficit that's at historic highs and with a tax base that is impossible to ever overcome the liabilities incurred by this government. So you have essentially a sinking ship.
So you have the good news of that they're counting illegal drugs and prostitution, so that's going to add to the economy. Now let's look at what's detracting from it. The UK's debt will effectively increase from well over £1 trillion by more than £100 billion. Or 7.3% of GDP as the ONS attempts to improve its accounting standards. The ONS will bring Network Rail's debt onto the UK's books and also stop classifying the state's stakes in the Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyd's as
the rail debt's coming back onto the books. I thought they privatized that. When is the Royal Mail debt? It's already on the books. When is all the debt from the energy companies going to come back? How about all the debt from the Help to Buy scheme, George Osborne? How about all the debt from privatizing the NHS? It all comes back to the books of the government eventually, you cad.
And also they count the Royal Bank of Scotland and Lloyd's debt that the taxpayer, therefore the government, own, and they count them as liquid assets, so cash, essentially. So they think that it's cash, but they're saying that now it's actually considered illiquid, so it's no longer, it's considered a debt and a liability.
Duh! Yeah, UK is 1,000% GDP in debt. Wake up and smell the prison of debt. All right, we gotta go, bye.
See ya.
Stay tuned for the second half, a whole lot more. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to crypto investor Karl Gray, who has amassed a fortune of over $100 million in the crypto space.
Hi, Max. How are you?
You know, Karl, it's great to have you back on the show, and we have to check in and talk about what's happening in the crypto market. You've got some price tumbling in Bitcoin. You've got some news out of China. What's the current state of crypto?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, there's a lot of talk of the price correction, which is actually quite normal, quite healthy. What I like to do is go back and look at crypto a year ago. Particularly, we'll use Bitcoin as an example. So a year ago, Bitcoin was in the $100 range. A year before that, it was sub $20. So yes, there's been a correction from the $1,200 spike that we saw at the end of the year last year, but we're still up 400% from a year ago. So, you know, most people, if they were investing in traditional funds or traditional products, a 400% return in 12 months would be pretty good. So yes, we're seeing a correction. There has been some bad news or some what's been perceived as negative news surrounding China, for example. But from what I've seen is, aside from kind of the headlines, which are always from the mainstream media quite negative, quite inflammatory, when you actually dig into the details, they're usually not as negative as it seems. And it's usually, there's a lot of semantics in there. For example, China, there was a common belief that they had banned Bitcoin, but of course, if you go on a website such as fiatleak.com, you can see that there's enormous amounts of Bitcoin being purchased in China every single day. In fact, at one point last week, there was 20 times the amount of Bitcoin going to China per minute as there was any other country in the world. So China's obviously not going anywhere.
Yeah, let me ask you, you've got two examples I think are informative. You've got Mt. Gox, the story out of Japan with Mark Capellas and the scandal that is the Mt. Gox exchange. And then you've got New York Barry Silbert. of Second Market, who's obviously now plugged into Wall Street and getting $100 million, $200 million into his Bitcoin trust, his Bitcoin funds, his Bitcoin exchange. Are we experiencing in 2014 a transition from Bitcoin going from essentially the online gamers and hobbyists now to the heavy hitters on Wall Street?
Well, when I began investing in Bitcoin back in late 2009, early 2010, the only people that were using it were the technologists, the people who would sit up at midnight playing games to get coins. And so I dreamed
And the price was?
Oh, we were talking pennies, you know.
So when people say, "Oh, you made $100 million in crypto," you started with being able to buy millions and millions of Bitcoin for less than 10 cents a Bitcoin.
That's right.
So you end up with an enormous position in these cryptocurrencies, and like a few people, yourself included, oh my God, there's $100 million here.
Right, exactly. And so what I was looking for was we needed to move first to Main Street, so we needed to get these prime time events, which of course the price surge accommodated that greatly. Everybody was talking about Bitcoin. But now we need to move into Wall Street. So we need these investment banks to provide liquidity so that we don't see such massive volatility in price. Now, if we can have that happen, which I believe 2014 is the year that begins, we're going to start seeing the price not only rise, but become a lot more stable. So I think it's a good thing. Now, as far as a lot of the negative events, such as Mt. Gox that you referenced, of course, that drives a lot of fear into the market, but this is early days. And of course, all we have to do is look at something like the traditional finance markets, where we have a lot of dubious things that happen every day of the week.
Right. Now, when we talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about crypto. And after Bitcoin was launched, soon thereafter came along Litecoin, which had a few bells and whistles, if you will, some benefits, some nice features, and this very quickly became a multi-$100-million coin. You were involved in Litecoin also in the pennies per share market. You came on our show last time, it was at 4. We speculated that it could get to 50. In fact, it went to 50 shortly thereafter. I want to talk to you about Maxcoin, because Maxcoin is developed here in the UK. It's an idea that came up during this show. The developers are in Bristol. And it has some very interesting, again, added features in the crypto space. It's got a really good traction. It's in the top 20 or 30 by market capitalization, et cetera. But from what I'm hearing is that you're now looking at Maxcoin as potentially as a whale that you are in the space. You're looking at it as something now that is on your radar?
Well, that's right. Well, as you mentioned earlier, I believe in getting into investments early. That's the only real way to be successful. So you buy them when they're cheap, when nobody's looking at them. So I started to look at Maxcoin a little bit later on in the game. It had already had quite the surge in price, and so I thought, oh, I've missed that one. That's unfortunate. Of course, there's been a lot of crypto corrections over the last few days or last few months, and so I believe now that Maxcoin is massively undervalued, and there's a few reasons for that. First of all, it's highly liquid. Its daily trade volumes are enormous, and so here we have a coin that is just being transacted. I think it's in the top 5 as far as transaction volumes go on a daily basis. And so, I thought, well, there's great opportunity here. And so I took a position in Maxcoin. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been continuing to take a larger position.
So like a Warren Buffett, as he famously said, he would buy straw hats in the wintertime. So it's out of favor on the big picture. The launch was a bit rocky, and now it's on the bargain basement in a lot of ways. So as a sophisticated crypto investor that you are, that's been successful, you're moving aggressively into Maxcoin. And, well, I know the developers myself in Bristol, and I understand that they actually have some new security features that they're rolling out that would give it more, actually, cryptological security than even Bitcoin. So this is in the pipeline. But, London itself is becoming uniquely positioned to be potentially a hub for crypto, because it's the old story. London is right in between Europe and the US. It's positioned brilliantly, and this could extend into crypto, and London could become what you call crypto Switzerland. So talk about that.
So for the past 18 months or so, as Bitcoin, as cryptocurrency became more and more mainstream, it became apparent to me that we were going to have, as you mentioned, something like a crypto Switzerland, a base where cryptocurrencies would be embraced, where there would be a very adoptive relationship, whether it be from a government standpoint, from a population standpoint. And I really feel that London has a great opportunity to be that. There's a lot of, as I've traveled around the world over the last few months, there's a lot of hubs that have some great cryptocurrency startups, some great technologists in. Obviously, there's a lot in Silicon Valley. Utah has a great little community. In fact, online, there's an enormous amount of volume going on there.
What about in the city of Hull? Now here's an example. We've had sovereign coins like the Aurora coin from Iceland, Space coin, the Lakota Nation in the U.S., and now this has come down to individual cities like Hull. And Hull is a city not unlike parts of Ireland that went through a post-Reagan Thatcher nosedive as the transition from industrial production went to financialization. And they've been left behind. The people of Hull are beautiful people. But the fact is they killed the fishing industry and they don't care. But here they come back and they say, wait, we're going to get back in the game in the 21st century with a crypto coin, Hull coin. What do you think about that?
Well, I've been a big advocate of this idea of economy 2.0, right? That we're on the verge of actually entering into a new type of economy. Here in London, for example, we have the history of the stock exchanges beginning here, the commodities exchanges, in very, very humble situations. And so I think with something like Wholecoin that's actually being embraced at a local government level, which I think is fantastic, people are going to start looking at economics and financial products from a very different standpoint. And I believe that cryptocurrencies have the ability to solve a lot of our geopolitical and social problems that we see today. For example, we've got the idea of having micro-lending, particularly into developing nations. So there's a lot of charitable organizations, there's a lot of entities that want to deal on these micro levels, providing micro loans, but of course transaction fees, wire transfer fees, all of these things add to their cost burden. And so really the ability to transfer small amounts of money or huge amounts of money to anywhere in the world instantly for near free, I think provides a huge competitive advantage for these people, especially their beneficiaries, and then for these people in developing nations to be able to transact with each other in a secure way where there's perhaps not traditional credit institutions or brick and mortar bank infrastructure. People can use cryptocurrency in order to basically grow a thriving economy from scratch, because literally all you need is a dial-up modem and a basic computer and off you go.
Right, you see this happening in Africa already, kind of a leapfrogging into the 21st century finance with mobile banking, et cetera. But what happens when you combine cryptocurrencies with crowdfunding? Because here in the UK, with the company that I'm involved with, StartJoin, which is a crowdfunding platform, we are marrying the two, cryptocurrencies and crowdfunding. We've been talking about it, and you are now in the process of bringing a project to the StartJoin crowdfunding platform that enables cryptocurrencies, and it sounds like a very exciting project. And talk about it.
Well, this is going to be a very, very exciting project worldwide. I think it's going to get a lot of global attention. The project is called the Statue of Responsibility. Statue
of Responsibility, not the Statue of Liberty.
No, it's based on the work of a gentleman by the name of Viktor Frankl, who is a Holocaust survivor. And the actual statue has been designed by a brilliant artist called Gary Price. And basically, it's going to be a companion statue to the Statue of Liberty. So the idea being that in order to have true freedom, you have to have liberty, but you have to have responsibility as well, or else dangerous things happen. So this statue will be off the west coast of the United States. It'll be at equal size, 300 feet tall. And basically the idea is to crowdfund this project, much like the original Statue of Liberty, that the people can be involved. And it's going to actually be the largest crowdfunding project in history to date. We're going to crowdfund $300 million. And a large portion of that, probably half or more, is going to come through cryptocurrency. Now, the reasons for that tie in very nicely with the project. First of all, people from all around the world can contribute instantly. Now we don't have to worry about transaction fees, foreign exchange rates, all of that. Anybody, anywhere.
Okay, so Statue of Responsibility project, it's been kicking around for a little bit. but it's been now restarted with this idea of bringing in cryptocurrencies for all the reasons you just suggested. It's global, its transaction fees are down to zero, it's instantaneous, and it's amazing how it taps into the ethos of the original Statue of Liberty, which, as you point out, was financed in large part by people, just doing collections on the street, and it was a crowdfunding, 1.0 going back to the origination. But it's a $300 million project, crowdfunded, half of which will be cryptocurrency. You're on top of it, and you want to get StartJoin right here in the UK, which is the UK premier crowdfunding crypto platform in the UK. You want StartJoin to do the crypto piece.
Yeah, we think StartJoin is ideally positioned to provide the platform for crowdfunding this project, because you're tied in, first of all, to all of the various different cryptocurrencies, and also you're melding the idea of crowdfunding with social media. So people can not only contribute to the project, but they can follow the project and they can spread the word. And so I think this idea of a platform for crowdfunding coupled with social media is going to be very powerful moving forward.
And crypto.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, Karl Gray, thanks again for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, Stacy Herbert, and I'd like to thank our guest, Karl Gray. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.